Good morning and actually good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. My name is Diana. I'm here with the whole U, and we are very excited to welcome Ruth from BECU on this workshop around protecting yourself against fraud. So without any further ado, I'll turn things over for Ruth to get things started. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Diana. I appreciate it. Well, good morning, everybody. I can still say it's morning. It's 11 o'clock. It feels later. Good morning, everybody. But thank you for welcoming me back to do this presentation all about protecting yourself against fraud. This is very near and dear to my heart, definitely for sure. Usually this topic, fraud, is one of those things where you don't need it until you experience it sometimes, or you hopefully don't even think about it until you do experience it most of the time. But today we're going to talk a lot about, different kinds of scams and all that fun stuff. And like Diana was saying, feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar. This is your time, so come with any questions that you have, and hopefully can get those answered for you. For those of you who haven't been to a presentation before, my name is Ruth Kaneko. I'm one of the financial educators with BECU, been in the financial industry for about 14 years now. Absolutely love it. We get to do things like this, right? Bring financial education to our communities, especially UW. Whoop, whoop. Love UW. And thank you for your cherry blossom trees, by the way. My family and I were just down there last couple weekends ago. Just lovely. And yeah, so thank you again. All right, so let's get started talking about all about protecting yourself against fraud. So what are we talking about today? We're going to look at what is fraud, some of the common scams out there, the most common scams out there that you're going to see that are probably going to affect you, maybe your so we're going to talk a lot about those different kinds of scams. What happens if you do fall for it? Ways you can protect yourself so you're not a victim, and then how to report it if you are a victim. And again, maybe you know somebody who's been a victim of fraud if you haven't been a victim of fraud, right? So what I want you to do, just to get your fingers moving, and just so I know who's all in the class, go ahead and tell us in the chat. What I want to know is, have you or has somebody you know been a victim of fraud? Go ahead and tell me in the chat real quick, just so I can get a good idea. Yes. Everybody's popping up. Yes. Wow. Right. I think I've seen mostly yeses so far. Oh, right. Yes. Credit cards, stolen identities. Isn't this scary? Isn't this I tell you, people are just not robbing banks anymore like they used to, right? I almost said like they should. I'm just joking. Like they used to. People are not are not robbing banks. They're robbing, digital, doing the virtual online. They're finding people's identities. Looking at ways to steal your money via virtual means, right? Or through things like ATMs or credit card machines. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, thank you for putting that in there. So I'm seeing that most everybody on this website or on this call has experienced some type of fraud or knows somebody with a type of fraud. So a lot of these scams may be known to you all, or some of them. So type in definitely if you have an example. I would love to hear some examples that you have too. So, and I find that a lot of people share their experiences during this one so that it can help other people if they're going through it, or so that they don't go through it, right? So let's kind of talk about what is fraud first of all. So fraud, of course, is somebody trying to basically get your money or your identity to get your money, right? So wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. Now, who can be a victim of fraud? Tell me in the chat, who do you think can be a victim of fraud? Now, when I ask this question, when we talk sometimes to like teenagers, the first thing they say is, oh, my grandparents, right? Or, oh, my parents. And I'm like, oh, you, your age group, you can be a victim of fraud. And I'm seeing a lot of people put in the right answer. And of course, it is anybody, from the person who has $5 in the bank to the CEO of Boeing who was frauded by a sweetheart scam, which we'll talk about in just a little while. So yeah, anybody could be a victim of fraud, which makes it very even more important to know kind of what's coming at you, so you know how to combat it, right? So let's kind of talk about these common scams that are out there. And I am going to tell you one of the things we highly recommend is once you take things like this, gets all this information, talk to people around you, talk to people, and you probably have, since a lot of you have been a victim of fraud before, but talk to especially your kids, your family members, your parents, talk to people about these different kinds of scams that they may encounter, but that maybe they won't know that is targeting maybe their age group, right? So let's talk about this one real quick. Recruiting scams. Now, what recruiting scams are is this is one that sometimes is more focused on like youth sometimes, but it can be targeted to adults as well. They're kind of targeting more now, so everybody. What these are is that normally, basically what happens is that a recruiter will come up to somebody at maybe a sporting event or a youth at like a school event. And what they'll ask them is they'll come up and say, hey, do you want to make some money? And if it's a youth, they may be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And they'll say, oh, yeah, okay, great. Can I buy your debit card and PIN number from you? So not just your debit card, but your PIN number as well. And they'll say, I'll buy it from you for like $200. And maybe the youth will be like, woohoo, right? Money, money, money. $200, I'm richer. Now, what happens is that once they give that PIN number and that card to them, obviously the fraudster, I'm going to call them fraudsters, will write the PIN on the back of that card. So they will now usually have a stack of cards that they have purchased off of people. Now, what this recruiter will tell the student is that the student will say, well, won't I get in trouble with, my bank, my credit union for selling my card? And they're like, oh, no. Just report it as fraud, like report your card is stolen in a couple days. And then they're just going to put the money back in your account. It's going to be totally fine. It'll just be reported as fraud, right? So what this recruiter is going to do is he's going to take all of these debit cards that he's purchased from people, and he's going to go around and he's going to hit up a whole bunch of ATMs, usually in a ring, right? Usually in a cycle. Like for you, our cyber security team has seen these recruiters, and on our ATM machines, we have, of course, there are cameras on ATM machines, so people see these recruiters going around, and these recruiters will pull out a stack of debit cards, and of course, the PIN number is written on the back. And they will go maybe hit from like Marysville all the way down to Olympia, right? And they'll what they'll do is they'll use these debit cards, they'll put them in the ATM machines, they will put in these fraudulent checks that are maybe for like $2,000, right? So they'll put this $2,000 check. The ATM will not read it as a fraudulent check yet because it hasn't been processed. So then they'll put that check in, they'll withdraw that $2,000 out. And then that person who gave them that debit card is now on the hook for that $2,000 when that check bounces, right? You're going to notice that, of course, it's a theme here, checks bouncing, fraudulent checks a lot. And again, they're on the hook for that money. Now, typically with youth, they're not going to have $2,000 in their accounts, unless they're really good with their money or very lucky. They are probably going to have maybe a mother or a parent or a grandparent on their accounts, right? Now, if they don't have the money in that account, now who is on the hook for that account, for that money, right? The joint on that account is going to be on the hook. So their family, somebody who is on that joint or as a joint on that account. So you got to be very careful. You want to definitely tell your students about this scam because it is prevalent and is going around. Again, what's going to happen is that they're going to take that check and just deposit it, and that money is going to be taken out of their account. So keep that in mind. Tell your students about the scam. Another scam you're going to see out there is, of course, social media scams. Social media scams always, I think, have been a thing ever since social media was a thing. Started way back when. And of course, you're going to see things like, scams on Facebook, identity theft on Facebook, where you get multiple, friend requests and things like that. But you're also going to see things like flossing. Now, flossing is one of those, and let me know if you've ever seen this on like Facebook or Instagram. You'll see a person flossing their money. And we're not talking like flossing the teeth or doing the whole flossing dance that I just can't seem to figure out. They are flossing their money, their jewels, their cars that they have. They're basically saying, hey, you want to make the same money as I am? Look, I made all this money and I'm able to buy all these wonderful things. Of course, the money they got was usually obtained through, stealing or countless other ways. But with flossing, has anybody ever seen this online? Tell me in the chat. Have you seen kind of people flossing? And typically it was probably a couple years ago, people were showing Gucci purses were a big thing. Yeah, so a lot of people have seen this. Yeah, so maybe some people would do like they would floss money, they would floss their cars, they would show these little Gucci purses that they have, and that was a big thing of flossing. So again, it's another recruiting scam to be able to be like, hey, do you want to do what I do? And they're trying to recruit you to be a recruiter to get people to sell them their debit cards. Again, talk to your students about this as well. So floss, basically, can you define floss? So floss again is just flossing or showing. It's basically like showing money, like showing the goods that they have. That's basically what it is. Another type of social media scams is something like this. So a couple of years ago, our BECU member actually got this Facebook request or message through Facebook. And ironically, it was actually somebody who worked in our cybersecurity team. And they were approached by a fraudster, right? And they got this message on their Facebook, and it said, "Hi, I'm just going to read to you now. The scammer's on the left, and the on this side, and the BCU employee is actually on this side. So the scammer is saying, "Hey, how you doing? Good, that's great. Who are you?" And this person said, "My name is Eddie Topal. I came across your profile in BCU bank page. Do you bank with BCU?" Yes. Now, this BCU employee obviously knew that this was a scam, right? He doesn't know this person. He doesn't know what's happening, especially when he heard the words, "Okay, I'm sorry, this sounds weird to you, but I'm serious and real with you." Whenever you hear those words, bail, right? Abort. Just don't talk to this person. Now, this BCU employee played along a little bit because they're like, I want to see what's going on just in case our members are targeted by this person as well. So, but if you ever get this type of message, just hang up, right? Just delete. So this person said, "I need you to do me a favor with your BC bank account. I'm willing to give you $1,000 if you can do this for me, Zach." Okay. I'm far off here in Saudi Arabia, and I need to get some money. So let me explain how this is going to work. Basically, a deposit of $10,000 will be made to your account. So you hold on to $1,000 just like I promised, and you can go send $9,000 to my daughter's guardian, right? All right, so how's this deposit going to be made? I had somebody who did this for me a while ago, but they moved out of town to his family, so he can't run the errand for me. So it's going to be a mobile check. So he's trying to draw the person in of, "Oh, I need some help. My daughter needs this money, and send $9,000 to my daughter's guardian." And the scammer actually sends Zach a picture or a screenshot, a so-called screenshot of their BECU account, right? So they're going to notice that, hey, they got enough money to send to him, right? That's not going to be like they got $9,000 in their savings, $43,000 in their checking. It's not like they're hurting for money. So the first question you ask is, why don't they just send it, right? Why does he have to send it? So once they, of course, the scammer did not know they were talking to a BC member or BC employee. So the BC employee was like, "Yeah, okay." And at that point, he deleted. And he made sure that this didn't happen to anybody else. But interestingly enough, if you ever come across this, of course, this is definitely a type of scam. Him sending a mobile check deposit, the same thing would happen. They would send a $10,000 check, mobile check. They would deposit in your account. It would bounce, and then that person would be on the hook for that $10,000. So another type of scam out there, and please, if you have any questions, let me know. So when you see anybody asking for money or anybody asking for having you deposit any type of checks for them, just say no for sure. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Perfect. And Diana was putting the definition of floss in the chat that said definition of floss is that means to flaunt your money or wealth, for sure. Thank you for putting that in there. Another one is dating sweetheart scams. This unfortunately happens more often than you know. A couple of years ago, it happened with like I was saying, the CEO, I believe it was the CEO of Boeing. He was involved in a sweetheart dating scam, and he didn't realize it. Gave lots of money away to this person. A friend of mine, actually a relative of mine, unfortunately, was caught up in one of these scams where they honestly, wholeheartedly thought that they were talking to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, that she had married him over the phone with the King of Saudi Arabia presiding over the ceremony. And for about 5 years, this scammer had gotten a hold of about almost $20,000 of her money. This was a woman who was on a fixed income, who had barely any money to live off of. But what she was doing, what they told her to do, is they would send her money, and all she had to do was send this money to their charities. But also, some of the money that she had to send it because he needed to get her visa ready for her to come over and live with him in Saudi Arabia. And in order to get a visa over in Saudi Arabia, you have to keep sending money to get that done. And it was almost always completed. She just needed to send a little bit more money. This is one of those really sad ones because so many people will get hooked up into these, and it is very hard to get them out of these because they've built up these relationships. With dating and sweetheart scams, the scammers are very good at what they do, and they typically do not ask for money right away because that creates a red flag. So they develop a relationship. These people have time. All they have time to do this, right? This is their job. This is their 9-to-5 job, is to get these scams in place. So they will, set the stage. They will develop the relationship, and then they will start asking for money. Like, oh, I want to come over and I have my ticket ready, but oh, my brother's car broke down, so I can't get to the airport. Can you please send $200? Oh, something else happened, right? So if you know somebody who has, or big piece of advice is, if you know somebody who's acting maybe different than they used to, maybe they're not talking to their family as much, maybe they are kind of reclusing themselves from normal events, things like that, you just notice something's different with them. And they start maybe talking about somebody who they met, and you never heard of this person, you don't know where they're from, you have this feeling. Try to get them to talk about the situation so you can figure out what is actually happening, because the chance of them actually giving them up is so hard at that point for them to do, because they've again established this relationship. So be very careful of these. Let me know if you have any questions on that one. Another type of scam out there is you're going to see employment scams. Now, employment scams are one of those where we saw this a lot during the pandemic. It was, employer would basically place an ad online or reach out to you directly, right? And they made to reach out to you directly. You didn't put a resume or anything on LinkedIn. You were just, sitting there on social media. And all of a sudden somebody messaged you directly and says, hey, we have a job for you that we would love for you to take advantage of. We think you'd be a really good fit. Well, you didn't apply for any jobs. It might seem too good to be true. For instance, during the pandemic, you would see a lot of pop-ups for work at an entry-level job for $2,000 a week from home in your pajamas, right? When it seems too good to be true, it normally is. When these situations, typically an employer will offer you a job. They might offer you a job, but they require you to deposit a check before they offer you this, before you get or after you get the job, right? Or buy something first. This is usually played out where if you, let's say this fake employer wants to give you this job, and they say, oh, we want you to get your home office set up. So we're going to send you some money. We're going to send you about $1,000 to get your home office set up so you can work from home. Woohoo, right? Sounds great. The $1,000, they'll send it to you, put it directly into your bank account, of which you gave them your bank account information, right? And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. We sent you too much. My assistant sent you too much money. Could you please send that $900 back of that $1,000 to set up your office? Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem. So you send that 9,000 back to them. Of course, what happens? That check bounces. The money is not in there any longer. So you are again on the hook for that 900 or actually $1,000. So again, just to make sure, legitimate employers don't ask for money upon hiring you. If you get a job where maybe you have to buy specific shoes, that's a different story, right? But typically, again, employers will not ask you for money upon hiring you. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Somebody put in the chat a story that is so right. Not typical, but unfortunately, one person said, one of my best friends had that. She didn't fall for that, but he was a very good communicator. It lasted for months, and he couldn't always talk because he worked in a nuclear reactor overseas. It was very evident after several months when someone else took over. Yes, right? Absolutely. There'll be another person to switch and be like, I'm not getting this person any money from this person. So they'll do a switch. Oh, you want to talk to this person? This person will come in and be like, oh, that was my cousin. And then they'll start trying to convince you, right? Exactly. Thank you for putting that in there. Yeah, it's so interesting. Question, I'm curious about the employment scams. Are there any instances where the receiver does not send the money to the scammer? Some instances, but usually that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest giveaways. Oh, sorry, you're asking, does the receiver send the money to the scammer? So a lot of people ask that question. Ironically, they're like, well, why don't you just keep the money and then, not give it back to them? Some people do think that way, right? They're like, oh, I could make some money. I don't know if that's a, not really an ethical thing to do. But yeah, that is one of the biggest questions we have. Usually from high school students, a lot of times they usually ask that question. But one of the things I would do is just don't fall for it. Don't play into it, because that's just, that's the dark web stuff, right? Exactly. And that check is going to bounce anyways. Exactly. So you'll have that money in your account for a second, but it's going to bounce anyways. So you're not going to be able to use it. Right. Funny. Great question though. I love it. Yes. So next one is loan scam. So this is another one we see out there, where a company may pose as a legitimate lender and contact you with a can't miss offer. We have a home loan for $500,000 with a 1% interest rate or 0% interest rate for 60 months, right? It's 5-year loan. The loan application, but in order to take advantage of this loan, it requires you to include any and all confidential and personal information, like your bank account, your PIN number, all that fun stuff. And again, what's going to happen is that this lender, of course, once you give that all that information to apply for this amazing loan, the lender uses your banking info, of course, again, to deposit a check that's likely to bounce and then overdraw your account. So again, you're going to see this kind of repetitive thing about bouncing checks here. And yeah, checks are still a thing because they're usually, oh my goodness, checks are fantastic. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So one person in chat was saying one of the scams I've been contacted for a couple of times involves shenanigans with Western Union money order money transfers. Can't quite remember the details. Yes. So couple of the biggest things that scammers would love to get you to do is to Western Union them some money. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but things that are very hard to get money back from, and usually, and I say very hard, but usually almost impossible, right? Are things like wire transfer. If you wire somebody money to an account, and the account is not legit, that money is literally gone. It is, I'm gonna say, almost not 100% impossible to get back once you wire some money out. I would say things like mortgage, escrow, wiring money into an escrow account for a home loan, right? This is one of those scams that we're seeing as well. If you are going to buy a home, I'm going to tell you right now that when you go to buy a home and you go to put that money, like your deposit, your money, your earnest money, your down payment money, your closing costs, everything, and you wire that money to an escrow account. Now, escrow accounts are usually very safe, right? You are going to wire that money to the escrow account. Now, for some reason, and we don't know how they do it, they will know that John Smith is buying a house in Tacoma, and he is going to be wiring his life savings, the money he's been saving for a long time to buy this house. Let's say for down payment, let's say he's sending $20,000 to this escrow account to hold for his down payment, his earnest money, all that fun stuff. The scammer will get a hold of that information and say, oh, hey, they'll email him maybe the day before that transfer is due. And they'll say, hey, John, they'll send him an email. It'll look exactly like the escrow company's letterhead or the email head, everything looks perfect, right? And they'll say, oh, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but we've changed our account number. Here's the new wiring account, or here's the new account number we need you to wire the money to. Now, let me just tell you this. Escrow accounts or escrow companies rarely, if ever, change their account numbers because it is way too hard for them to do. They have a lot of stuff they would have to go through to change those account numbers. So if you ever are going to buy a house and you ever get something like that, do not send that money to that new escrow account number. Always check, call up that escrow, call up the number of that company, call up the number of your real estate agent, talk to them and say, hey, I got this email. Is this legit? Right? Usually they're going to say no. But be very, very careful. Unfortunately, I've seen it and it's so sad. People have lost their life savings because they fell for this, right? And because it's so convincing and it's so easy to fall for it. But a couple of things you want to be very careful of is scammers will try to have you send wire transfers. Western Union money orders are a big thing. So any money orders, again, very hard to get that money back. Also gift cards. So a lot of scammers will ask you to send them gift cards or a wire transfer or money orders because they're usually untraceable. They'll get the money to them and they're untraceable, right? So be very careful if anybody asks you to send those things up front. That's one of the biggest things you don't want to do. Oh, yes. Another person came in with a thing, and I want to talk about this in just a second because we're going to talk about grandparent scams in a second. So yeah, so be careful with those loan scams that are out there. Again, no, people are asking for, always go to a legitimate lender if it sounds too good to be true. Usually not true. Another thing I want to talk to you about real quick is ATM skimming devices. So we all use ATMs. Most people use ATMs at least one time in their lives. And ATMs are great, right? You can get money in, you can put money, you can take money out, you can put money in. But there are a couple things you want to be careful with when you're using ATM machines. First of all, never go to ATMs at nighttime. Just word to the wise. And I say that because people know people are taking money out. I just would not do it because it's just not safe. But careful of ATM machines, unless you're going inside of a branch, a little bit different, but just be careful. The other thing I want to talk to you about with ATMs is that sometimes people can put skimming devices on them. So there are, so when you're using an ATM machine, there are a couple places that scammers can put devices on these machines that you may not be aware of, right? That you just got scammed or you just got your information hacked into, okay? So a couple places is like the top right hand box right here. That is called an ATM skimming device. What that is when you put your card into the card reader, that information is then known by that machine and then it pulls up your account, things like that. What these scammers do is they will get these little devices called ATM skimmers and they will put this card reader right over the skimming device right over the card reader. So it looks exactly like this device, right? And then of course, maybe there might be somebody in a car, not too far away, collecting all this data once you put your card number in. And then they may have a fake keypad on the ATM machine. So now they have your PIN number once you put that in. Or they may have this device where, have you ever been to gas stations and you pay at the pump, right? And instead of like using the chip where it says beep, instead of that, you put the card reader in. Well, you'll notice on those card readers at at gas stations, you're going to notice that there's usually some tamper-proof tape. You'll notice it now, but you'll put your card in, you're going to see on somewhere it says tamper-proof tape. So if that tamper-proof tape has been tampered with, you're going to see it, it's been broken. Don't use that card reading machine. Don't use that. I have a friend in the Social Security, in the cybersecurity team. They said that they never pay at the pump anymore. They always go into the gas station where the attendant is, so they can pay there, so they know it's going to be safe, right? One of the biggest things we see too is that some people the reason is because if you notice down here at the very bottom picture, this is actually inside a card reading machine at the pump. And they actually put a little device, I believe it's right here, one of the devices right here, and they can collect information that way. So you don't even know they're collecting your information when they do it. One of the ways to combat this is that whenever you go to an ATM machine, like for instance here, with the ATM skimming devices, what I always tell people is before you use an ATM machine, jiggle it. Jiggle the card reader. I'm not talking like pull it off, but just jiggle it enough so that if something moves, it should never move. There should be nothing on these machines that move at all. if there's, because they're usually serviced, and so nothing should be moving. If something does move, don't use it, move on, right? Tell somebody about it, especially if it's like a bank or credit union ATM. Also, with these ones, look around you, right? If it looks weird, if there's something odd about it, if the camera is like a piece of tape's been putting over the camera, you'll notice these things. It's very easy to just go to an ATM machine, pull your money out, but just look at your surroundings, make sure that you everything's on the up and up. And I would say be very leery of ATM machines out there that just say ATM on them. And you know what the ones I'm talking about? Because we're all going to the fair and we love going to the fair. And I fell for this a long time ago when I was, long time ago. And I literally went to the fair and I was like, oh, I need some cash. I want to go win a fish, right? And I went to this ATM machine, which they usually have, and there was little tiny boxes, super sketchy, right? And it literally said ATM machine. This thing had been probably serviced in like weeks, months, who knows? And you just put your card in, and I checked it, but I was like, oh, okay, no, well, I gotta get some money out anyways. So I put my money in. It was like $5 to get my money out, and sure enough, I had fraud on my account a couple of weeks later, right? I don't know if it's from that, but I'm pretty sure it was. So with the ATM machines, I would say the safest place to go, of course, is in your branch. If you are with Bank of America, go inside of Bank of America to use their ATM machines because those are serviced every day, right? Credit union, any. If you're at BCU, go to BCU in the branches ATM. So again, those are going to be the safest places for you. So let me know if you have any questions about those ATMs too. Another scam you might see out there as well is going to be like your, oops, sorry, I'm going to move this down here. There you go. Tech support pop-up scams. Now, I hate to tell you this, but if you were on your computer and like, oh man, this Microsoft Office, I'm having trouble with this, right? Okay, how can I fix this? And then all of a sudden you get this pop-up that says, oh, hey, I noticed you're having some issues. This is Microsoft Tech Support. How can we help you, right? And you're like, oh, did you know this? I totally fell for this the first time I started using Microsoft Office. It did totally got one of these. And I was like, how did they know that? They're geniuses, right? That they have somebody like in the background working for them. I'm like, oh, one person's having issues. No, that's a scam usually. So it was a total scam. They usually will pose, of course, as a legitimate business. I'm sure you've heard those scams out there. I think GeekWire, somebody was using their name to do a scam. So you want to be very careful of who you trust with these. If you get them, just don't even click on them. I would say turn off your computer, wait, and then turn them back on. Don't even engage with this. Is absolutely no, because then they can imitate. What they'll do is they will try to imitate a blue, screen of death. And they'll try to get you to click on things like, oh, there's a suspicious activity detected on your computer. Contact a live technician now. And then if you call that number, it's totally a scam and they're going to try to scam you again. So be very careful and leery with these ones too. Close the window. Yes, you can close the window, but be very careful of that too, because if you close that window, it might send you to a link for something else. So be very careful. I would say just shut down your computer. And so it just shuts it down and then you can bring it back up again. It should be gone. That's what I was saying, instead of even engaging with it at all. Yeah, good question. Lovely. Somebody was in the chat just said, I had someone contact me like that. I kept telling him that I didn't have a computer. And he kept on with the script. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yep. You can figure them out pretty quickly. Another attempt you're going to see sometimes is called a phishing attempt or a phishing alert or phishing email, right? And phishing emails are one of these things where they will try to pose as a legitimate, maybe your bank, your credit union, and they will send you a very an email that gets you to act fast, right? Typically with scammers, what they're trying to do is get you to put aside your common sense and click on something really fast because something's about to happen that you need to fix, okay? So you're gonna notice that in this email, this scammer wrote this email from a trusted bank or their trusted bank, the customer's trusted bank. And they said, received a notice that you've attempted to withdraw the following amount from your current account while in another country. So 135 pounds, right? If this information is not correct, someone unknown may have access to your account. As a safety measure, please visit our website via the link below. Click. Once you click there, now that that scammer may now have access to your computer. Credit unions, banks, financial institutions typically will not deal with you, will never do something like this. If there's something happening in your account, like if you have a fraud or something, they suspect a fraud in your account. So a lot of financial institutions will have a system in place where they are looking for anomalies in your account. For instance, I had something happen on my account long time ago, years ago, where BECU actually called me and they said, hey, our system is called Falcon, and it watches, it just makes sure that if there's something weird out of your account, like maybe you traveled to Indonesia and you didn't put a travel notice on your account, then your account's going to be flagged, something's going on, right? That's why it's super important if you travel to put a travel notification on your accounts. That way they won't be locked out thinking that it's fraud, right? Very, very important nowadays. So I got this call from BECU that said that, hey, Ruth, or hi, you, looks like there has been some possible fraud on your account. Would you have a minute to check this with us? I said, yes, thank you so much. I will actually call you back in a second. Because what happens is even scammers can get your phone number and they can call you and be like, hey, we're from this and this financial institution. Do you have a second, to walk us through this to make sure it's not fraud? They may actually be the fraudster. So I just said, okay, thanks, I'll call you back. Click. I did not call the number on my caller ID. I called the number on the back of my debit card, the actual number of BECU. And I called that number and I said, hey, somebody called me from BECU. Was this you? Yes, it was. Now we can proceed. Now let's go ahead and proceed with that. It actually was fraud. Somebody from Colombia had tried to order something for $30 on my account, right? Probably associated with that little ATM machine. But so be very careful of those, right? Again, and you're going to notice like in their emails, they may say things like BECU Bank, your account has been temporarily suspended. Well, BECU is not a bank, it's a credit union. So that's a big, right? Big red flag right there. And any of these emails, one of the biggest red flags you're going to notice is grammar errors, misspellings. Typically with financial institutions, they're going to proofread these emails that go out umpteen times. So always look for spelling errors. That's one of the key giveaways here. Next up is going to be lottery scams. Whoop, my favorite. Here's the thing. Oh my goodness, one person will say, I get these messages daily with their Netflix account. Yes, a lot of times now scammers are like, oh, we're not going to have to do with their banks. We just have to say your Netflix account has been, scammed or something wrong with your Netflix account. Can we help you with this? Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So lottery scams, I hate to break it to you, everybody. I was here too. If you don't buy a lottery ticket, chances of you winning are pretty much nil, right? So if you don't buy the ticket, probably not going to be getting the millions there. But lots of scams, of course, happening with these ones. Now, this is one of the things I want to talk to you real quick about is family emergency grandparent scams. Unfortunately, this is one of those things we see so many times where grandparents get scammed. I was working when this one couple came in. I remember my first start working at BECU, and they brought in a huge file of paper, and they just looked so sad. And they were like, "We got scammed. Our grandson." Somebody called impersonating our grandson, saying that he needed money. He was trapped in I don't know, Mexico or something like that, and he couldn't get out, and he needed money because he was in jail and needed money for bail, right? It was so sad. So this happens a lot of times with grandparents, scams. The grandparent might get a call from the grandson saying that they're in jail. Please send money. Or maybe, hey, it's the IRS. You owe us money. You need to pay now, or else we're going to send you to jail. Your college student needs money to get home. Please help. So another person in the cybersecurity team, his grandmother got a call from what she thought was her grandson, so his brother. And he said, hey, grandma, I'm over here in college and I can't get it home for the holidays. Can you help me out? And she's like, oh, we'll call Sean. Sean, this doesn't sound like you. Are you okay? I thought you were home already. I thought your mom just told me you were home. Oh, no. And so she did, and it was very smart of her. She said, you know what, sweetie, let me call you back just let me put you on hold for a second. I'm going to call your mom real fast. He was like, no, no, don't do it. She called and she was like, no, he's home. He's here. So luckily she didn't get that fell for that scam. But tell your grandparents, tell your parents, tell people that you know that if somebody calls you in person saying that this is them and they need money, always call that person right away to verify that that is them. One person I want to say this in the chat said one of my staff members had someone contact her saying that her granddaughter, was in a Mexican jail and she needed to post bail. I begged her not to, but she couldn't get a hold of her, and she sent $3,000. Oh, once that was paid, then she got another call from someone else saying that now this lawyer needed their fees covered. I'm so glad she hung up on that, but it was later determined that the granddaughter was in England, right? $3,000, right? And the thing is about these scammers is that once they know someone's going to give them money, and this is what they find with sweetheart scams, they will go back to them again and again and again because they're easier targets. But thank goodness this person was like, nope, I fell for it before, not going to do it again. But it's so sad, right? Hard lessons to learn there for sure. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. So this one right here, so that's sweetheart scams, account takeover scams. So one nice thing that we are getting on our phones, I noticed, have you ever gotten the potential scam alert phone kind of ID, caller ID? You all seen that? So that is one of those things where it's really interesting. It's great because you can look down and go, oh, potential scam fraud. Nope, not going to answer that one. If they leave a message, they're legit. Maybe they'll leave a message. Sometimes they're not legit and they'll still leave a message. If you've ever gotten those, I've gotten those a few times. One of the things me might see is account takeover fraud. And this is the ones where if somebody calls you and saying, posing as somebody else or posing as a different company, and you just something does not feel right, hang up, do not reply to it. Don't share any online banking credentials. Typically, again, it might be asking for your banking credentials if they're impersonating your financial institution. Don't share security codes. So security codes are, I'm sure you've all done this. I've done this numerous times where I forgot my password and I have to get a new password. And if I type in forgot my password, I will sometimes get a security code. And sometimes if it's you forgot your password at your bank or financial institution or credit union, you will put in forgot your passcode, forgot your password. So they'll send you a security code after going through umpteen different security questions, right? Now you're going to have that code. Now you're like, wait, why was I just texted a code? That's weird. I didn't initiate anything. I know what my password is. So what usually happens is if that happens to you, somebody else, a scammer, is trying to access your online banking. Okay. Somebody's trying to access your accounts and they're clicking on forgot my password, hoping it will send that security code to you. Then what they're going to do is they're going to call you and say, hi, we're from blah, blah, blah financial institution. We got a message that there may be fraud on your account. So we sent you a security code. Can you please let us know that security code so we can proceed with figuring this out? You'll be like, oh, sure, 5, 6. No, don't do it, right? The moment you do that, once you give a security code to a scammer, now they have complete 100% access to your account. They can change that password. They can now lock you out of that account because they've changed the password. Very, very, very hard to get out of. Be very careful. Please never, ever, ever, ever share these account passcodes. And also report the calls to your financial institution immediately. If something happens like this, talk to your financial institution and say, hey, I have just been approached by somebody. I've just been called by somebody reporting that they're from here. Please let people know, because chances are it's not just happening to you. They're trying to infiltrate more people's accounts. So be very careful about these ones. Another one is retirement scams. So this is, again, one of those very sad things that happens, especially when you're trying to save for retirement, you're putting money away. Retirement scams, you want to be very careful with these ones, especially when you're looking at things too. Just where you are putting your money into, the different types of accounts. If you are putting money into, not financial institution accounts, you want to make sure that these are legit. Talk to a legitimate financial advisor about your retirement accounts as well. So be very careful that you know exactly where your money is housed at. There are lots of retirement scams out there too. So all these scams, just to tell you, is be very careful and diligent about your money. There are a lot of things you can do to protect yourself. One of the things you want to be careful is if did you fall for it? And with this one, kind of goes back to the first scam we were talking about, like with recruiting scams. Never, of course, ever sell your debit card. Again, talk to your friends, talk to your students, your kids, talk to kids that you know, talk to your college students that you know. You'd be surprised how many college students fall for this one, because there are recruiters on campus targeting these students and be like, hey, do you want to make $300? Yeah, you need some food for this month? Totally, here you go. So you'd be surprised how many people maybe don't realize this is a scam, that they're falling for this one. So, and again, they are held responsible if they do. Now, don't be a victim, of course. 5 things to remember about fraud is, again, never let anybody borrow your debit card. Never give out your PIN or your online banking information. A scam we saw probably about 5-10 years ago, and it's still going around now, not as much, but never cash or deposit a check for anybody. This is one of those big things where people were coming up to friends or just people they kind of maybe didn't know, and they were saying, hey, I forgot my debit card at home, and I just got this check from my grandma. It's like for $20 or for $50. Can you do you mind if I just put your name on it, and then you can cash it for me? And then once you do, of course, same thing happens. It's a fraudulent check. You put that $50 check in the bank, take the $50 out, give it to them, and now you're negative $50, right? Or that $50 now missing from your account, right? And trying to do a nice deed, and ouch, you get bit for it. So never deposit checks for anybody, never open accounts for anybody. And also be very aware of, and I know this is gonna be harsh, but a lot of fraud and a lot of things come from sometimes family members. And I say that, I know we hate to think that. I had a lady come in, and she was like, she had her granddaughter on her account, and she said, I want to close out my accounts, and I do not want to put my granddaughter on my new accounts. And unfortunately, her granddaughter was systematically taking away all of her grandma's money. And she was buying things with it she shouldn't have, and she was taking all this money out, not telling her grandma. But her grandmother was like, what am I going to do? I love my granddaughter. I'm not going to report her to the police, obviously, but she's taking all my money. So she had to close her accounts. She just separated those accounts from her granddaughter. I also had this one kid. He was 21 years old. He came in with a credit report that he pulled of his that was like 10 pages long. And I was like, you're 21 years old. What did you buy? What kind of credit did you open? Come to find out, his uncle had gotten a hold of his social security number, and he had bought like an altering vehicle. He had gotten like 2 huge items with his social security number, and opened up 10 different credit cards in his name, which he now had to clean up, right? So be very careful. Even unfortunately, I opened up this one account for this mom and this little baby she was with her, who was probably about 6 months old. She was opening up an account for her daughter, and she gave me her social security number for her daughter, and we put everything in. And this daughter already had a credit report. This daughter already had a couple of different credit cards and a credit score, right? And I think the mom knew, because she looked at me like, oh, you could see that. So yeah, so unfortunately, fraud does happen with family members. I didn't know if it's true in this case, but it does happen with fraud a lot of times. So be very careful there too. But one of the things you want to be careful is be careful what you post on social media. Know who you're talking to. Trust your gut. If it's too good to be true, it normally is. And again, talk to people about employers will not typically find you on social media. LinkedIn is a little different, things like that, but social media, they're not going to reach out and be like, hey, I would love to hire you. It's usually a fake scam. One thing we recommend is check your credit reports annually, if not more. The reason being is because this is one of the number one places you'll find if somebody's tried to maybe use your social security number in a fraud, in an identity theft or anything like that. Check your credit reports. We always recommend annualcreditreport.com. That's the only official place to get all 3 credit reports for free. Excuse me. So check those. During COVID, they offered weekly credit reports, and I think they're still doing similar access right now. But check your credit reports. It's again free once per calendar year, and you can check Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So check those out for sure. Now, if you are a victim or if you know somebody who's been a victim, they just might not know where to go or where to start or how to fix this, right? So number one, notify your financial institution that what is happening. File a police report, file a complaint with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission. They will require a police report. So you want to do that. And also if you or someone you know has been a victim of Social Security, I'm losing the word, identity theft. The Social Security Administration fraud hotline is right there. So you can definitely check that too. And we can definitely send out these slides later if you'd like. And like I was saying, talk to your kids about scams. It's very important, not just your kids, but students on campus, any place, right? Talk to them about scams. Scams are everywhere. It's so prevalent nowadays. It's sad. As you all said, everybody I think on this call has been a victim or knew somebody who's been a victim of fraud. One of the cool things that we just started actually BCU, is that we actually have a fraud and security center where you can get tons of information, where if you or somebody you know has been a victim, you can actually go here and get all the numbers you need to call on here. So you're gonna notice that if it's account fraud, this is what you do. If it's an online scam, here's the numbers you can go to. If it's digital security, whatever it is, wire transfer scams, there's lots and lots of information on this website. So check that out too. Very, very handy and very helpful. Here's a couple more resources. So BCU has got a lot of so question is that what was the name of the credit reporting company that accesses all three agencies? So annualcreditreport.com is where you want to go to check all three of your credit reports for free. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. So annualcreditreport.com. Do not go to freecreditreport.com. It's actually they're going to charge you to get your credit reports, and they're actually going to charge you for it's called an account monitoring service. So don't go there. Freecreditreport.com, don't go there. Annualcreditreport.com, that is the only official website set up by the government to check your credit reports for free. So that's the one you want to go to. Yes, when you go to this website, you will have to provide your Social Security number, because that's how they're going to pull up your credit report. So it is linked to your Social Security number. So definitely do that. So these are the websites that you want to go to. Some more resources. BCU's got a lot of information on this. Better Business Bureau, checking the companies that you're going to be working with before you work with them will kind of mitigate that fraud sometimes, for sure. Federal Trade Commission, lots of great information there. And then Internet Crime Complaint Center, if you have been a victim of fraud via online, this is where you want to go. And this is where you want to go file that complaint to get that ball rolling. Like, hey, I went here. This is where the fraud is happening. Sometimes you have to be your own best advocate when it comes to fraud as well. But check here on ic3.gov. That's where you want to go for that. So this is one of those things where so BECU partnered with a company called GreenPath. We actually pick up the tab for our members to call them, and their credit counseling service. But this is a great organization. They also do, you don't have to be a BECU member to work with them. And what they do is they can actually walk you through your credit report. But be very careful also out there of companies like credit reporting companies. Credit counseling services. And be careful of those kind of companies too, because make sure they are on the up and up. They're legitimate businesses. Go to the BBB, check on them a lot before you let them help you handle your money. One of the reasons too is because I had this one person, they said that they went to a credit counseling service. And the credit counseling service person said that, oh yeah, we're going to help you out. We're going to give you a new Social Security number so we can, help you with your credit. Yeah, that's illegal. They can't actually give you a new credit or Social Security number. So be very little leery of that one as well. But here's a couple of things I want you to do to get started that might be very helpful. So first of all, number one, check your credit reports regularly. That is the number one place I would look if I had if anybody tried to open up any credit cards in my name or any type of that thing like that. Check your credit reports, make sure there's nothing on there that's not yours. Consider adding a fraud alert or a credit freeze to your Social Security number, to your credit. That way, if nobody can open a credit card or any type of credit for you unless you because your Social Security number is like literally frozen. They cannot open up any credit information for you without you lifting that freeze, which is nice. It's usually free. If you've had a fraud on your, if you've had fraud before, like on your, if you've had a identity theft or anything like that, you can put a freeze on your all 3 of your reports, so nobody can access information. A little bit on that, if you choose to put a credit alert or a credit freeze on your credit report, just make sure that if you're going to go and apply for something like an auto loan or a home loan or a credit card, and you go apply for it and you're like, oh, it's not going through, what's happening? Just know that you have to lift that credit freeze before you can go with that. Also, I had this one gentleman, he came in and he was trying to apply for like a $5,000 credit card, and the alert popped up in his credit report and I couldn't proceed with it until I called the number that was listed on the credit report. So I called the number. The guy was standing right in front of me. I called it, ring, ring, and he, sure enough, answered the phone. Hi, is this so-and-so? Yes. Can I proceed with this loan? Yes. Right. So then you can proceed with the loan. Same thing happened. The next week, ironically, another gentleman came in, same thing. There was an alert on the credit report. I called the number, ring, ring, no answer. The guy was sitting right in front of me, nothing. Man was irate. He was storming off. All of a sudden he came back and he said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I changed my number and I forgot to update the credit freeze with that information, or the credit alert with that information. So we couldn't proceed until he went and changed it, and then you can proceed later. But just be careful and remember that you have that freeze on there, and always update your information. And then be cautious on social media. One of the biggest things I would encourage you to always be cautious with social media. Whatever you post, just know that you may not be the only person, or your friends may not be the only people who are seeing that. All right. So I'm going to stop there. We're a little bit over. It's about 11:57, but I'm going to stop there and put this up here. We'd love to get your feedback on the presentation. I know that was a lot of information coming at you. If you have any questions, I'm going to open it up for questions right now. Yeah, if we would love to get your information on, or your feedback and things like that, and let us know what you think and what topics you would like to see too. One person was asking, how do you feel about Credit Karma's reports? Yeah, so thank you for talking about that actually. So I was interested in Credit Karma. I was like, oh, what is this? I went to Credit Karma, put my information on there. I was like, oh, okay. You do get some of the report. You don't get the whole report. It does give you some helpful information. It's like a quick view. They send you emails all the time. They, of course, try to get you to, there's like, they'll say lots of different credit cards out there for you to peruse. I would say Credit Karma is a great little snapshot of it, but they're not going to send you your full report. I would say go to annualcreditreport.com if you want to get all 3 credit reports for free and line them up, and so you can see all of what's going on. But Credit Karma is not bad. It's not it's a fine site, I would say. Yes. One person's asking if you can show the fraud services again. This one right here? I think it's this one. Yes. Yes, if you have any questions, or these are some great resources too. Again, the one that I hear most often is the Complaint Center, the ic3.gov, but there you go. Oh, nope, it's not the right one. Just kidding. There you go. BECU Fraud Services. That's the one. All right, I'll leave. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and we can send these slides out to you after our call today. I'll send a follow-up email with these slides as well as the recording of our seminar.
Perfect. And perfect. And I'll put my number or my information right there. So that's my email address is ruth.kaneko@becu.org. If you have any questions, or if you need to ask a question, or you just remember what you're going to ask, let me know. We can get those questions answered for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you all for attending this very informative seminar. So we look forward to reconnecting again, and be on the lookout for more BECU events in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you so